Morgan Ortega spoke with Benjamin Netanyahu today. Morgan was in Israel. We'll get to Morgan. Scott Traynor, by the way, 14 million simulations they have run on what a potential outlook could look like in the upcoming election. Scott's going to be joining us here shortly. But first, Chris, you saw President Biden not wanting to touch this today after Robert De Niro was sent to the courthouse yesterday, and I'm not sure that went as planned for the Biden campaign. But, of course, the big story today is the deliberations for some 4.5 hours. And I was thinking to myself, what's really at stake here, right? On the legal side, we know. Potentially prison, potentially not. But what about it politically? Recent poll. If Trump is convicted, are you more or less likely to vote for him? Nearly 2/3 said it would make no difference in their vote. So what is at stake here politically?
Brother, you could stage The Last Supper with the original cast, and it wouldn't affect 2/3 of the vote. There's more than 2/3 of the vote in this election are banked, hard banked. They are hard Republicans. They are hard Democrats. They are not persuadable. When we talk about this election, and this is a rematch,
right?
5%, 8%. That we're talking about 10% at the most of Americans who are truly persuadable. So it doesn't matter what the 2/3 think. It matters what those folks at the margin think. And by the way, how does this fit into the longer narrative that's going to roll for another 5 months yet after this?
What about with independents at 63%? So like if you're not a Democrat, not a Republican, you're in the middle, not saying you're a persuadable.
That's the secret, which is independents are not more moderate than other people. They exist on a political continuum. They have Bernie Sanders is an independent.
Right.
And, right, and so's like Ted Nugent. So the independent vote is a parallel spectrum that goes from left to right, and a lot of independents are usually Republican voters, and a lot of independents are usually Democrats.
I'm not sure that you heard him there off the top, but Trump said today, Mother Teresa couldn't beat these charges. That's what he said. What's the expectation game that he's playing here?
Look, I think in those remarks, Donald Trump is trying to appeal to his base there. He is very much trying to make himself seem like he is the victim of a political trial, a political persecution, if you will. So, look, I mean, in terms of what Trump is expecting, we'll see. I mean, this will could come down to one juror could change this all. But Trump, they're very much trying to use this as a political stump, if you will, a campaign stump.
What's he doing there?
Lowering expectations. So if he is convicted, not even Mother Teresa could beat these charges with a conflicted judge, conflicted family, trumped up charges. And if he beats it, well, then he's done something that not even Mother Teresa could do.
That's right.
What do you expect out of him these next 2 days? I mean, we know we're not going to get the verdict tonight. We don't know when we're going to get it. Right? Could be tomorrow, could be Friday, could be next week for all we know. What do you think it's like right now? And I suspect you would know or have a hunch within his team and within his circle.
Well, I think you're going to see more of the same. I mean, he will use every break, every opportunity to not only attack the judge and the case, but then he will turn it to attacking Joe Biden on the issues that matter: inflation, immigration, crime. He will make the case that, you could go to you get let out of jail if you're an illegal immigrant and beat up NYPD officers, but he could go to jail for, bookkeeping issues. Those are the kinds of comparisons that I think are really going to resonate. But he will use it to his maximum advantage because he can't get out there now 5 days a week. He can't get out there and campaign.
I thought it was notable, Laura, that the president today, President Biden, he could have spoke to reporters if he wanted to. It was his decision not to. Yesterday was the day which they sent Robert De Niro into the courthouse. I'm not sure that went the way that Democrats and the campaign were hoping for. Why stay silent today from the president? When do you think we're going to hear from him on this?
He's the opposite of what Trump is trying to do, essentially saying, Trump is undermining the judicial process. Biden is staying out of it and above the fray. And he has to, in order to hold that line, he can't be talking to cameras. Now, whether or not sending Robert De Niro was the best move, we're throwing a little bit of spaghetti there. But I will say it's better for him to stay far away from this and let the jury do its job.
When there is a verdict, when do you think we hear from him? What setting?
I think you will see him in front of the White House. I think he will talk about this as the work of the third branch of government, as the people, 12 independent citizens rendering a verdict, and as the justice system doing what it's supposed to do, which is to uphold the rule of law.
We got less than a month to the debate. And I bet that's a place Joe Biden would like to talk about that.
By the way, live pictures right now outside of Trump Tower. I think there you go in the background. There is Donald Trump entering his home, waving to the crowd there, spending the day at the courtroom, at the courthouse, a day in which the jury deliberated for some 4.5 hours. And we know that they will be back tomorrow trying to figure out what they are going to do with this case. Thank you for watching, and make sure you go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.